Hi friends, it's my joy today to share with you an update and some exciting news from Heath Meikle, one of our supported missionaries. 5 years ago, Heath and his family left Greece after serving there for 8 years. They came back to Canada, they settled in BC to start a brand new chapter in their life and ministry in a very different context. Now it is pretty different, but if you happen to see where they were before in Greece, you'd know there's quite a few similarities. So in Athens, they actually lived in an anarchist neighborhood. And the kinds of things that they would see and witness on the streets around them is not so different from where they are now, which is East Hastings in Vancouver. So it's in this context, which is both new and yet familiar, that Heath has been really focusing on church planting. So a year ago, Heath and a fellow pastor launched Christ City Church in East Vancouver. The church was doing great. They were getting some rhythm and momentum. They were seeing church growth, and then the pandemic started. And this young church was forced to pivot. So I invite you to watch this interview with Heath as he explains more about what's happening with that church, and also he shares a special update for us in terms of what's next for him.
Heath, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know you've got some great things going on in East Vancouver. So I know that a year ago you were part of a church plant, and I would love to know and be able to share with others how that's been impacted during this time of COVID. Has it impacted how you guys have been able to grow, or what's been happening?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the ability to be able to address all of Crossroads Church. So, greetings from sunny Vancouver. You don't usually have those two words put together at the same time, but it is sunny today. Yeah, church and COVID. So a year ago, middle of September 2019, we launched a church. We actually had a really good window. We had like 60 people. We moved to a neighborhood. We launched, and up until about January, February, we were running about 130 to 135 people, 20 kids under age of 5. So that's crazy. We had really good growth, and then COVID hit. So the difficulty with a new church plan during COVID, I'm sure like as a regular church, everybody struggled as a church, but when you're having really good momentum, you're like, oh, what's going to happen? Is everybody going to evaporate? Are they going to disappear? So we really kind of scratched our heads and figured out, how do we pivot this? The strength, though, that we had is because we spent a year essentially training our group before we launched, we have really good buy-in. So we plugged into our neighborhood. We pivoted as a church citywide. So Christ City Church, who I'm a part of, is a network of neighborhood churches in a nutshell. And we've got three different congregations that meet in 3 parts of the city. Ours is in East Vancouver. And so we as a citywide church plugged in, and we started doing daily devotionals. So a lot of us guys who were on the preaching team, we had put a rotation in. And as that passed, we actually started having more people from our congregation going through these daily devotions. What we did essentially, some people went live stream, etc., but we as our church in East Vancouver, we went to a Zoom call. So we created a liturgy. We had different people of our congregation read, parts of the service. And it was really amazing. And then we, all three, 1, 2, 3, and we'd press the video and we'd all listen to a sermon, and then we'd all come back and gather for communion afterwards. So we've maintained during COVID about 80, 90 people on our Zoom call every week, we've been really blessed. Outside of that, we really decided to double down and really pray for our neighborhood. So we have weekly community groups. They were all went onto Zoom, which is less than an ideal situation. But what we did do every 3rd week, we would go on a prayer walk. Everybody's outside walking anyway, right? Because of COVID, everybody was going stir crazy. So we just said, hey, why don't you, as you're walking, pray? And that has really driven a lot of what we've done is stuff coming out of the prayer walk. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. Yeah, we're still trying to sort out what evangelism looks like during COVID, which is difficult. Not that you can gather large groups and do any sorts of things, but outside of that, just like Crossroads, we've had to struggle with what's next. So September 13th, probably after this video is recorded, we will start our first in-person gathering at our regular location. We rent an Italian cultural center. It's called Famiglia Ferlane. It's a big, huge old dance hall. So we are excited that we will go back and meet together there. So yeah, that's it for that one.
That's great. That's awesome. Why don't you share with us just in terms of how has your church really responded to the needs of your community during this time?
Well, like everybody else, you're figuring out, okay, now what do we do? And so seems like the word of the season rather for us has been pivot. We had an individual in our citywide church donate $10,000 to a benevolence fund. So it's been a real privilege for us to be able to purchase a whole case of gift cards for like grocery stores. So we started, essentially, there was 3 of us. Can you imagine? So 3 churches citywide, over 1,500 people on our list, and me and 2 other guys, we phoned everybody. And making sure everybody was okay, making sure, who had lost their job, who didn't lose their job, all of those kind of things. And so through that, we were able to ascertain who needed help, who didn't, and we were able to give out 10 grand worth of grocery cards, which is really cool. Outside of that, we as specifically East Vancouver, I live on Hastings Street. So everybody knows about Hastings Street, and I'm just literally down the road from the downtown east side. And there's an organization there that reached out to us as a church and said, hey, we need help. So what started out initially, we were gathering as a citywide church groceries every week to deliver to Jacob's Well, the organization. Then they would distribute to anybody who was in need in the neighborhood, which translated or morphed into me organizing a team from Christ City, East Vancouver, to actually twice a month cook for a meal. So we would cook together. Because the weather has been nice, we would cook for about 100 people and then distribute it out to different parks, and everybody would have picnics in parks. So that's been a couple of things that we've done. As far as COVID as a church, outside of making sure that everybody's okay. I've had fun doing pastoral visitation via motorcycle. So somebody needs prayer, they phone me, I drive by, do a socially distanced prayer time on the front yard. So yeah, that's been fun. Anyway.
That's awesome. The motorcycle just suits you. I can just totally picture that. Yeah, so fun.
Yeah. Not what everybody expects, but that's okay.
That's
I'm
exactly what we expect of you. That's great, Heath. Now, I've heard that there are some new things kind of coming your way. So why don't you share a little bit with us in terms of what are your next steps as you look at doing ministry in Vancouver?
Yeah, 5 years ago, we had to come back from Greece. And that was really a difficult thing. It wasn't our choice. And the question always well, what's next? Like, what do we do? Like, where is our value? We were in an anarchist neighborhood. I'm sure Dan has told you crazy stories. Like, that's a weird skill set. Like, where does that translate here? So we plugged in with Christ City Church, launched a church on the east side here. But still, what's next? I'm the associate pastor of that church. So over the past year or so, I'm feeling more and more burdened on the downtown east side. As I said earlier, it's one of the more difficult neighborhoods. It's one of the lower postal codes in Canada. There are a few that are probably worse, but any issue that you can imagine that exists magnified on the downtown east side. There are a lot of organizations there. Before COVID, I was working with Union Gospel Missions as a volunteer, and I would do devotions for their people in their alcohol and drug rehabilitation center. And as COVID kind of lengthened, I got a call from a guy at UGM asking if I would help them. They have about 200 units of housing, and they have no one to do pastoral care for any of the people in their transitional housing. So I've been offered a position, volunteer, of course, to help shepherd people on the downtown east side directly. Couple that with church planting strategy. I've partnered with another guy from, I guess, the organization's called Message Trust. It's based out of the UK, out of Manchester. They are a group that creates missional teams, strategic missionary teams in difficult areas. And they've launched in 20 years, 200 of those teams all across the UK in difficult neighborhoods. So I'm looking at incorporating some of that methodology, and with the long-term goal of church planting on the downtown east side in a completely unsustainable neighborhood. So all of the guys out there that are who are church guys are thinking, how do we pay for this? How do we pay for that? Well, how do you church plant in an area where you can't pay for anything? So I will shift my title at Christ City Church to be urban missionary. And it's a real joy to have Crossroads beside me. Crossroads has been a part of our lives for, decades, but as a direct supporter of us for more than 10 years. And it's been really a joy. So you need to know that your direct involvement in our lives has helped plant a church in East Vancouver, and it also will help the least marginalized in this city. So yeah, if you have any more questions, you can feel free to email me or drop me a line or whatever, and I'd love to articulate my vision further. I'll probably have graphs and diagrams and a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's okay. Yeah.
That's great.
Any other questions, Tracy?
Well, I would have so many, and I'm sure people would love to hear more. I just know that we've got to wrap it up for now, but I just so appreciate hearing what you're going into and what you've been through already. And it's so fun to see you in this new season. I know you've been here for 5 years back from Greece, but just to see how God has taken that skill set and experience and passion and using it in East Vancouver, which is so great. So thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I hope that's encouraging for you. I know every time I get a chance to speak with Heath or with any of our partners, I am so encouraged just to hear what God is doing in different parts of our world. So I want to invite you to pray with Heath. He has given us 3 specific prayer requests. He has asked that we as a church would just walk with him and pray for this young church as they continue to grow and adapt to this new context, doing community, outreach, and evangelism in COVID. He's also asking that we pray for this new opportunity that he has with Union Gospel Mission to shepherd the clients that are living in their transitional housing. And finally, that he's asking that we would pray for his new opportunity as he becomes an urban missionary with Christ City Church in East Vancouver. So thank you so much for praying. I'll see you next week.